So, E.T.
We have a third contributor,
the guest star E.T.
Yeah, literally, he's right here. He's very quiet though.
He's not very talkative today. It's okay. I mean, I get stage fright.
It's all right. You talk when you want to.
He's shy. We'll get him next time. You just hang out, buddy. Have yourself a Coors banquet, and we'll get you next time.
How old is E.T. now?
It's over 40. It's over 40, right?
Is it really 40 years?
It's been 40. We've been coming here for 40 years. I think it was. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let me just say, the traffic here sucks. I cannot stand how, and I don't know if this is just an older flaw.
I'm actually shocked you had trouble on three or so on a Friday. Is this Friday?
Yeah. No, it's coming into the city and like through those tunnels, and it's like I don't know who decided to put street lights.
Well,
on a highway, on a bypass.
I forgot this and relearned. I knew this before, but then I relearned it. Liberty tunnels were the first automobile tunnels in ever built.
Really?
Yeah.
Like ever?
Like ever.
Like in the whole...
Because we had a lot of engineers and a lot of steel resources here that no other city had first.
So Liberty Tunnel, really?
Liberty Tunnel is the first automotive tunnel in... I think it's anyway. It's definitely in America, but I'm pretty sure it's everywhere.
Holy... I did not know that.
Yeah. Pretty cool, right?
So that... Yeah. Okay.
Puts us further
They need to
on the
update
map.
it, though, still.
Oh, it's probably because it hasn't been updated since then.
It needs updated a bit.
No, it's aged.
Because it shouldn't take...
Sure.
It shouldn't take 20 minutes to go 200 feet. At least that's what I think. What's he doing? He's shutting the door. Okay, if this is my last podcast, my name is Matthew Hahn. I'm currently at 7. He's shutting every door. Man, when you said we were doing horror theming, I didn't think you had this in mind.
Yeah, we're talking A24 today.
Yes, we are talking which I did not realize how expansive.
They do not stop. And I think I wanted to tackle A24 as like a whole studio at some point, but for this one, I just kind of wanted to focus on their horror endeavors because I think it's like they're like the most independent, big budget studio. And this is like the most independent of all the genres, like stylistically.
Yeah,
so I thought that there was like, there's still some tap in there.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was definitely I was surprised to see how many titles they've come out with. And I've heard all of them. I've seen a decent amount, but I did not realize they were A24.
Yeah, and they've had a focus on like bringing up new talent too, like both behind and in front of the camera, which is kind of cool. I just shattered this tea bag. I shouldn't be allowed to touch things.
What kind of tea?
The good old black tea. I need the caffeine.
You need the caffeine right now?
Just a straight up, grocery stores brand.
Lipton or no, like a off brand.
Just the regular grocery
Giant
store
Eagle.
brand, yeah.
Grocery brand. So don't they like with those brands, don't they usually like pay, so like is Giant Eagle paying Lipton to rebrand it for them or something?
I could buy that.
You know what I mean? Maybe not Lipton specifically, but
yeah.
I feel like that's how it works. They buy, I don't know.
It's black market black tea.
It's illegal in 49 states. That's why we have it here.
Yeah.
So with A24, the logo too. The logo's pretty sweet looking. I think that's always key is...
It has that like very like late 70s, early 80s flair.
Yeah, no, it definitely,
which I dig about it.
I've noticed though, for me, if I'm writing, that's always something that like I struggle with. And I don't know if you have this issue as well. I'm unable to write a character unless I know their name.
That's interesting.
I don't know why. It's probably just me.
Most of the time the few times I've like gotten real deep into it, I usually think of personalities first, and I've changed names before.
Yeah, no, I have too. But I noticed once I finally find the name or a name that I'm happy with, writing them gets easier for me. But for some reason, I need that name to begin. Like I can't call him Character A or Steve or Jimmy's brother or Teresa. Whatever, I got
the one with the beautiful voice.
Yes, I have to know. Like, I don't know. For me, the name is very, very important, and I can waste way too much time on that. I can get almost like a form of world builder's disease, is what they call it.
And A24 is like even just their horror titles. I could probably
they do more than horror.
Oh, they do tons. They do a lot of independent stuff. Like The Lobster came out a few years back. Right, that one was really good. I did actually list a few of them here. Like Enemy is not necessarily a horror movie. It's more of a thriller.
Yes, but it definitely has.
It's kind of in that arena a little bit.
And it is very. I got to say, it is very out there.
Yeah.
In the way it like
Villeneuve kind of got his start like by that really like cerebral weirdness.
Yes,
that a lot of indie
yes, it's a cerebral film. I think like it's one that you're like, what?
But like you look, Denis Villeneuve is killing it right now. He just did a few years back. He did Blade Runner. Now he's rocking the whole Dune reinvigoration.
Yeah.
So even though just announced that Dune has now been delayed, which is a big bummer.
Oh, really? It has been delayed?
Yeah, delayed till 2024. Basically, they're saying
is that
until
because
the
of
strikes or whatever.
Is that because of the strikes?
Yeah,
that's sucks.
I'm assuming mostly ADR work would be my guess, but
and two, like with Enemy, like I gotta say, like that. I mean, it has that very big open ending.
Mm-hmm. It very like scratch your head and question the ending.
And two, okay. I mean, obviously, I think there's something very metaphoric going on in that story or allegory, however you want to put it. Yeah. Oh, most stories do. What am I saying? If you have I don't want to give. Well, it's not really a spoiler, but maybe it is. If you have any sort of arachnophobia, maybe don't watch Enemy.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Especially that ending. Like I've interpreted it, and this huge spoiler. I've interpreted that ending. I guess you can interpret it however you want. I've interpreted that as that his wife, right? Or is he married, or is it just his girlfriend?
I think he's with the movie star's girlfriend.
Yeah. Okay.
At the end.
Well, yeah. Basically, I've interpreted that he now sees her as a spider. Well, is that or like?
I think it's I don't know. It's largely metaphoric, but it does in one way, shape, or form. But whether it be literal or metaphorical, ties into the secret society stuff with the actor being related to like the deep society stuff, like all the trafficking and stuff that's shown in the earlier parts of the film. Yeah, I mean, Enemy is an interesting one. Launched. It was really one of the big ones that launched.
Yeah, and I think it was the early 2010s, like 2013. I think it came out, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And anyway, the point I'm getting at here is an ending like that. It's a very, very open-ended, like you got to almost take. It does not spoon feed you.
And not unlike...
At least I don't think it does.
Later on, he did Prisoners. I mean, Prisoners has a very similar ending.
And that's one thing that you're going to get out of more independent films is you're going to get these crazier...
more outlandish, think PC kind of endings.
Yeah, you're definitely going to get the endings which, when you go like the mainstream studios, you tend to not, or you don't tend to find it as often.
It's meant more to be very wrapped up with a bow type. Give you all the goods and the info. Yeah, I mean, Witch is kind of in a similar arena. I mean, it's a little bit more straightforward, but it's still very
even just the way that is a very unsettling one. I will say
Rob Eggers, man, he's a talented dude, and he's now he's starting to branch out from A24, but he was one of their heavy hitters that they kept around quite a lot. I mean, he did Lighthouse for them also. Lighthouse,
which you have seen. I have not seen Lighthouse.
It's that one's interesting.
And again, so there's definitely I would say. This whole, like, especially we're focusing strictly on the horror movies that they've come out with. Yeah. But yes, they are definitely interesting. There's that big theme of, you can definitely delineate.
Rob Eggers loves like period pieces.
Yeah.
It's very apparent he's very good at them. He almost has like a Wes Anderson style to his gloom and doom that he does. It's that kind of stagey kind of, I can't even put my finger on it right at this moment, but I've articulated it in the past.
You're talking about like how it's shot or like it's like production design?
Production design, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Like certain miniatures and just that whole style is interesting emergence in recent years.
Yeah.
And Eggers is interesting, dude. He did Northman for, I forget what studio at this point, but that was the first one that he really branched off from A24, and he pretty much worked, I don't want to say exclusively, I mean, he pretty much worked only with A24 for quite a while. I mean, Witch was one of the first big heavy hits that everybody recognized A24 for.
So that's, and the Witch too, like, or the VVITCH, however.
The VVITCH.
Well, because like I think isn't that how the W eventually?
Yeah, it's like it's two capital V's is how it's.
And that's
typeface.
how we eventually got it. I think. I didn't look that up. I didn't do my research. No, that is definitely like atmosphere, and this I think in horror too. Horror has a lot of atmosphere to it, wouldn't you say? The genre.
Oh, yeah. I think it's better when it does. Yeah. I mean, we also put MIDSOMMAR on this list from Ari Aster. I mean, that one almost like is set up to not be a horror movie in ways that makes it more creepy.
And when we get to that, I have to ask you something, how they would have done, because they did a great job with it. That's another one that goes with it. With the witch. One thing I have to give, and I did not realize, again, I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention in the opening credits. I did not realize that was an A24 film. But I mean,
I rewatched the first act of it, and I'd forgotten like the score is so good. It very much locks itself into the period that it's set in, which I thought was one of my favorite period pieces.
Yeah, and no, I mean that's what I was going to allude to or say is kudos to them for making me feel like I'm way back.
They had all the
1600s.
The language art coaches that they had on that were top notch. I mean, they nailed Old English. For for knowing that, especially an independent film, and let's define this too for anyone listening. What makes an independent studio different from like Warner Brothers or Disney, or what would I would say it's a more loose attention to tools of the craft. I mean, like Universal is going to have much more strict guidelines for what you can and can't do, and it's like it's their brand name supersedes the creative vision of the individual, I think, is really what it comes down to. I think independent cinema is more open to an individual's ideas.
Yeah.
Is how I would define it.
No. And I would agree with that. The independent, because technically when we're saying independent, we are specifically meaning independent from the mainstream studios that everybody
is very familiar with. They're very
Warner
entrenched
Brothers,
in.
Disney, Sony,
everything that Disney owns.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. I mean, there's really only, if we were to, I'm trying to think now, how many big studios are there? There's Disney. There's Warner Brothers / Discovery now.
Yeah.
There's
Universal,
which are they still? Yeah, they're still their own.
There is Paramount. Everything that Disney owns, and Disney, acquired Fox and all the Fox subsidiaries, which was pretty substantial. It was like Fox Searchlight. Focus features.
Fox is a part of Disney now. That's no longer technically.
Yeah,
it's
still mind blowing to me that that's a reality.
Yeah, I know that. Yes, and the Paramount is Paramount still Viacom owned by?
That's a good question. I think they are. Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, so that's
who's Columbia owned by?
I think that's Sony. Sony owns them.
That sounds right. Yeah.
But Sony would be the other one if I didn't already say them. I think that's the main big. Hitter. So when we say independent, we are talking about someone outside of that sphere of influence.
As much as like A24 produces a crazy amount of movies every year, but they still are very new.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers has been around for 100 years at this point. Like
it's amazing too, because the quality of what they make, it feels like they are like a big time studio.
And they have such a signature, they do have their own signature vision emerging, which is partly, I mean, now they've won how many Academy Awards at this point? Moonlight not being the least of which, but that was still a crazy moment at the Oscars.
Oh yeah, with the flip I still am like, how did that happen? How do
you mess that one up?
How did that go wrong with La La Land getting it at first? They give them the wrong envelope.
Talk about creating bad blood.
Not that, and La La Land is a good movie too. So, but
E.T.'s gonna go down for a nap.
E.T.'s going down for a nap.
He's looking at me asleep. He had 5 cores in the time we've been sitting here.
He did?
He's a beast.
How did he do that?
Did you see the movie?
E.T., yeah. Okay, so when we're talking specifically the A24 horror movies, or even just thrillers, ones that definitely have that.
I threw Enemy in there, even though it's not a horror, but it's on that line enough.
It is on that line. There's that sort of uncanny, like you watch it and you're like, I don't feel like, there
was enough.
It's enough to
horror element in there for me.
It's enough to set you on edge and feel strange.
One that
about
everybody constantly forgets about is Under the Skin. Have you ever seen that one?
I have not. You have? Yes, you've told me this one.
There's almost no dialogue in that movie at all.
Yeah.
It's Scarlett Johansson. She's I'm going to blow the plot for you, okay? Yes, so everybody knows there are spoilers for the movie Under the Skin. The whole time Scarlett Johansson is an alien in that movie, and you don't really know it. But she's going through just kind of like a call girl type scenario the whole time and getting used and abused the whole time. And then like you slowly realize that she's an alien, and that's why she never says like one word through the whole movie. And it's very strange. It's like it's all score and ambience. It's like there's very little structure to it. It's just kind of one of those ones that just follows along.
And I think again that harkens back to that idea of independent cinema is you're not structure too, writing wise, you're going to get a lot of experimental structures, or people trying to sort of play around or break that classic traditional 3-act structure that you see a lot.
Sometimes maybe not necessarily with any, like maybe too much unguided direction, but I think that's where you get some interesting stuff. And it's not you're not always going to have masterpieces out of that, but I think a lot of cool stuff comes from that.
Yeah.
The tea.
Yeah, grab the tea. Don't kill yourself.
I'm trying to do the tea and the tea beer. It's not working out super great. I do not recommend.
No, and one thing I've always liked about independent cinema in general, and I have to give the props to A24 too, is they're not afraid to tell a story that might not necessarily be the most comforting.
No, like they're
especially if we're talking the horror movies.
Obviously, they're really amped up in like unsettling the hell out of you.
Yeah,
it's like,
well, one of the most I didn't realize, and I think this is because I see that image you have right here on screen is Black Coat's Daughter. Is that the one? Is that an A24 film?
Check me on that one because I'm not sure.
Yep, A24.
Wow,
that is now that you want to talk about one that's like unsettling. I say like if you haven't seen that one. It's definitely...
I have not actually, so
it's definitely one of those ones where you're like, it gets under your skin, I think. Not to... No, okay, I did not... I wasn't trying to go for a pun there. No pun intended on that one.
But pun indeed. But pun nonetheless.
I will say, I think that is what makes true horror for me.
Yeah.
And I think having seen a decent amount of these movies, but not even realizing they were A24 until you had mentioned doing this episode, is... You don't always have to have that flashy jump scare thing going on.
It can almost be creepier not to sometimes.
No, they tend to use more of the subtext and letting your mind kind of fill in the blanks.
Now, it's not A24, but one of the ones that I come back to for that style a lot is Gore Verbinski's The Ring.
Yeah.
Through DreamWorks, actually, at the time. Very, very interesting movie. Very deeply atmospheric, creepy, psychological, what have you, ethereal.
Yeah.
Mess with you on another level kind of stuff. And I like that kind of horror the most, I think, where it really like lives with you after the fact and like you can't shake it.
Yeah.
Makes you question
what's going on. Yeah. Definitely. So when you had mentioned doing this episode, what made you want to pick A24? Is it definitely the string of movies they've done?
The string of movies and like the consistent experimental tone they've had. They've kind of entrenched themselves as, I don't want to say one of the last bastions, but definitely one of the most interesting playgrounds of independent cinema left going on, where it's like they're willing to roll the dice on people and take these new up and coming talents who haven't really proved themselves on titles before and give them a fairly substantial budget to get some stuff going. They found Ari Aster, they found Rob Eggers, Denis Villeneuve. They didn't find Alex Garland, but Alex Garland's directorial career started with them.
Yeah, and I didn't realize like Annihilation, another
Annihilation
A24
is
film.
not an A24.
Oh, it's not an A24.
So
okay,
yeah, both Sunshine and Annihilation are not.
That's why you have it like that. Okay.
I have them asterisked for that purpose. But I put those in to show that he's gone on to great successes beyond this. But they gave him a podium, so to speak, to get there. And I wasn't as big of a fan of his movie Men, but I mean. He came back after having had some distance from A24 and came back and decided to do something with them that he was going to have some more freedom with, which, all the more power to him for that.
Well, it's interesting how A24 doing these horror movies, I think it's neat how horror being such a, what's the word I'm looking for? You would think it's more of a constricted genre in terms of what you got to do. It's like, all right, well, you got to scare people. So we got to have this, we got to have that, we got to have ABC.
Yeah.
But you can really do a lot.
With very little.
Yeah, with very, very little. And I think that's one of the things I'm just kind of repeating myself now, what I said before, like letting your mind fill in the gaps.
Well, it's like going back to The Witch, too. If you look at the production of that, it's like, in terms of what they had to build, it's not a lot.
No, yeah.
They really built like two structures, really.
And that makes it, being in like that, having that wilderness, that realness to it, definitely
And they did build the structures for that. Like they didn't find a place. Like that was all from the ground up. They built all the structures for it, and they lived in for several months. Actually doing the movie. So
I could not do that.
Yeah, super interesting stuff, and especially for how early on it was for Rob Eggers. Like that was interesting.
Well, they seem to be fans of the slow burn type story where we're not going to just have stuff. I mean, although there is a few things that will do that, but we're going to play with what you think you should be hearing or seeing and kind of just string you along. Yeah. Like one, and this is the one I wanted to ask you about, like MIDSOMMAR.
MIDSOMMAR is crazy.
Or MIDSOMMAR, as I've heard.
I've heard it every which way. Yeah. That movie's crazy.
No, definitely.
Also, I not the first, but one of definitely the first big blip for Florence Pugh. She's phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely.
It was funny. Like one of the big criticisms everybody had for her after the fact was like, "Oh, I know like the guys at Red Letter Media always make fun of her, her pouty face."
Yeah.
But it's I think that movie's creepy because it doesn't play out like a horror movie.
No, it doesn't.
Just plays out like a summer trip.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I can't believe how much they made me afraid of sunlight a little bit, like the way because the majority of that is all in daylight.
Yeah,
that's what I think is so culture. Yeah, that's what I find so interesting about that. From like a light. Now they would have done that, I'm assuming, with actual daylight instead of. Oh yeah. That sounded such a stupid question.
No.
Well, you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean,
how they can shoot like day for night. They can have the HMI lights, or now with digital, they can just.
Well, also like those, they had a lot of the barn interiors and stuff. I'm sure that they like worked their schedule around like the interiors and stuff, and like using like the majority of their daylight for the exteriors, and then like stretching that afternoon light for some of the interior shots. Like that's how I would do it anyway.
Yeah, that was I have to. Yeah, the fact that they did it all mostly in daylight creates such a different quality.
And there's like those sequences.
It's not the first thing you think of when you think of horror.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't.
There's those sequences of like just like the overt happiness of the culture, like contrasting this like horrible that's happening.
Yeah.
It's like it puts you in such an unsettled atmosphere.
Well, you have, and when you have the thing with her boyfriend that is her boyfriend.
Yeah, she goes on a trip with her boyfriend after a family tragedy of hers she endures, and kind of to get her out of her shell a little bit, they invite her to come along on this retreat that they're going on, this writers retreat that they're going on. They're a group of journalists trying to crack this story of this culture that's been kind of cloistered away, and they're looking at it from a journalistic point of view, that they've found something that nobody else knows about. In their heads they've cracked some serious journalistic gold, and they're trying to capitalize on it. But the more they get into this society, the worse it gets, because the more attached that they get to it. And
there is that big play, and maybe you could even offer what maybe The Lighthouse does this too. It's taking, and that I think horror in general does this, taking something familiar and just twisting it upside down on its
Lighthouse is basically just a total dive into insanity. It's like
if you're looking for something, to watch with the kids.
Yeah, definitely don't watch with the kids. Definitely don't watch with the parents.
No, don't yet.
But Lighthouse is interesting from the perspective of, it's kind of like The Shining, which you're trapped in a box for a long period of time with only so many people. And it's like how corrosive, just like
and what do you do? Exposure. I love stories like that. I love stories that are they don't necessarily have to be epic in scope. The stakes and like what's happening, it almost has that literally that experiment type feel going on. Like, okay, if we get a bunch of people and we strip society away, what happens?
On the subject of The Lighthouse,
like that Lord of the Flies type deal.
They utilized a small space really well. Again, I mean, it's Rob Eggers. He's proven he's good at that. But they also, like, for the score and the sound design of it, they recorded the existing foghorn that was on the island.
Oh, really?
And they used it, like the actual foghorn, and they created a VST off of it. Has now since been made public domain as a VST synthesizer. I have it. It's free. It's available on Spitfire's site. You can grab it and use it and play with it.
Oh my God. Bring this up.
I am going to bring it up.
Bring this thing up. Is there a way to get it into the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm not the tech guy here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even know.
I have a channel now.
I don't even know what I'm doing here, actually.
That is the actual foghorn.
Oh my God.
Let's see what else I have. They have a bunch of sounds built into it. It's super great.
That is both. See that, like, almost. Wow. Are you hearing this?
That's what the whole movie sounds like. It's great.
Dude, that almost reminds me. Did you ever play Myst back in the day?
Dude, I love Myst.
Like there was something similar to that. You're stuck on that island. It's very similar to that. And it always made me want to think that there was something horrible around the next corner, but there never was. It's just a puzzle game. And dude, wow, that really
Myst is great.
Yeah, this really, like, that sound alone is like both alarming but yet enticing. Like you want to be like, what's going on? Like it's not enough to make you run for cover.
Yeah, but
you definitely want to know more. I got to watch Lighthouse. Is what I think.
It's a good movie. Here. Definitely, again, it leans into that period piece really well, more so even than The Witch does. Mm-hmm. It like really lives in that period piece style, but it's like 1800s industrial. It's kind of like the atmosphere, but it's just Willem Dafoe and Rob Pattinson going full batch crazy for 90 minutes. It's definitely will leave you. It makes you feel like you went insane.
And that's one thing too. I think a majority of these movies, at least from the ones I've seen, I don't think they're super long.
No, yeah.
I think they tend to stay in that sweet spot. Whereas like now you have a lot of movies and it's like, you look at, again, it's kind of strange how an independent, well, I mean, it makes sense. They're making a film with less resources to work at, but it's strange how the independent movies are definitely saying, no, we want to keep it shorter and concise. But the studio movies are like, nope, we gotta make them long and push them up. Because I think now like the average mainstream studio, is maybe over 2.5, like approaching, like every movie I've seen, like bigger tentpole blockbuster.
Well, you see, it's weird emergence.
It's approaching
like
2.5 at least, yeah.
And weird emergence of late has been like the 3-hour drama.
Yeah.
Being allowed to be a thing. It's like Dune, Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and
like
which
Blade
totally,
Runner.
yeah. If the story demands it, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and if it's not filler just for the sake of it,
and
that's great. Like if you can make 3 hours work and it's like you feel like you got more story out of it in a good way, like sure, why not?
And I think that's kind of strange.
Like how many times have you seen a book adaptation that leaves things on the cutting floor? You're like, damn, I wish I could have seen that.
Yes,
like,
all the time, yeah.
So I think in that aspect, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's like the people at the studios like, are we going to start seeing like 4-hour, 5-hour movies? At that point, it's just a miniseries.
It's a miniseries. Chop it up.
Put it on
whatever plus
thing.
series.
I only want it playing on my TVs and my screens that we also own. And it's like, well, sir, we don't make TVs. Start making the TVs.
Well, what do you mean you don't make TVs? I've been coming here for 20 years.
Sir, we only make movies here. No. We're going to start making everything. I don't know what that accent is.
It's something.
So yeah, but going forward,
there's a lot of stuff. And weirdly enough, we brought up Oppenheimer. I mean, the Safdie brothers who did, this is not an A24 horror, but I mean, they wrote and directed Good Time with Robert Pattinson, who is a known known Chris Nolan collaborator.
Yeah.
So it's like it all ties together. It's all, but. I mean, Safdie was just recently in Oppenheimer. He played William Teller in that.
You sound confident on
yes,
that. Okay.
Yes. I actually stand by that. I'm confident.
Well, I got to say, this is definitely A24 with these movies. Well, Hereditary, there's one we didn't talk about yet.
Another Ari Aster from, he did Midsommar as well. Hereditary was all over the place.
Well, and I remember like seeing one of like the trailers for it. I almost thought, okay, this is going to be similar to like a Rosemary's Baby.
That's what I was thinking
deal.
too.
Yeah, which it kind of is a little bit.
I was thinking like Rosemary's Baby. What was the other one? Skeleton Key.
Yes.
With the Kurt Russell daughter. Kate.
Wait, is that Skeleton? Oh, with
what is her name?
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
See, this is because we were talking about Can't Hardly Wait before, and I couldn't think of Jennifer Love Hewitt. Kate, no, not Kate Winslet. Kate. It is Kate. I
want to say Katie Holmes, but I know for a fact
that's
wrong.
not it. This is Presque Vu, I think, in action right here.
Kate Hudson.
That's
the one. I didn't need a device to do that either.
I need a device for everything.
I just know her as the Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell offspring.
Yeah. It's such a bad way to say it. Oh, yes. Could you imagine like walking up to someone?
You're the one that came out of Kurt Russell,
You're the
right?
offspring of, I think we gotta, that sounds like an A24 horror movie. The Offspring. What is it? Like, I don't know what the story is.
Directed by Ari Aster.
Ari Aster. Okay, if we're pitching, all right,
co-directed by Robert Eggers and Ari Aster.
Oh my God. Okay, so we're pitching a horror movie. We're to A24. We're calling it The Offspring. Copyrighted right now. Nobody take it. But what do we want to have happen? Now, the obvious thing is you can just have some
starring Kate Hudson.
You can have some form of. Like, do we want this to be centered on the child? Do we even want there to be a child?
There's no name.
There's no name
of the first character. It is just the child.
It is just the child.
It's like an evil version of Baby Yoda.
I think we've
that's
struck
it.
gold.
Evil
That's
version
it.
of Baby Yoda.
Evil version
I get
of Baby
my
Yoda.
multi-million-dollar budget right
The
there.
Offspring right now.
And the entire score is done by The Offspring.
That would be amazing.
I just made a I'm not releasing this episode. It's a multi-million-dollar idea.
Oh
right
my
there.
God.
Podcast over. I'm going to make my millions.
If only.
But yeah, I mean, A24, we talked about how the fact that they made a bunch of famous people. I mean, Greta Gerwig's one of them.
Yeah.
She did, with Saoirse? Lady Bird. Lady Bird was in A24.
Lady Bird, yeah. Which is a great movie, yes.
And, now she's out there making billion-dollar Barbie movies. We got bolstering Sofia Coppola with the Bling Ring.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all non-horror ones, but I like how they're posting up a lot of cool talent here. Like
And I think this speaks to, and what's your opinion on it? How important, because I think for people, and I didn't even realize, like I said, the amount of movies they've cranked out. How important is it to still have an independent cinema?
I think
or just
big
an
time.
independent like storytelling.
I think that's why they've
general.
been so successful, is because they are a very open creative playground for these creative types to come in and they like have these wild ass crazy ideas and be like, hey, I want to do this weird movie about Scarlett Johansson being an alien, and then she peels her skin off in the last scene. Like, yeah, go do it. Here's a bunch of money.
Well, I think too about like when I'm thinking, you think of some of the smaller horror movies that like someone like Peter Jackson did back in the day.
Yeah.
And then
it was one of his first big ones he's known for was a zombie movie, right?
Yeah, he made it in New Zealand. Come on. Brain Dead.
That's what it is. It was largely inspiration for Shaun of the Dead, if I'm not mistaken.
That I don't know. That I'm not sure.
I'd heard that somewhere.
It definitely has a similar vibe, but a lot of the zombie movies, I think Zombie Tales all have a similar thing going on.
Yeah,
with them, there tends to be gore usually, which makes.
We talked about this last time with the horror retrospective episode. Yeah. They kind of reinvigorated with 28 Days Later.
Yeah, they did, and now they're having 28. You said 28 years.
I think it's 20. I've heard it a couple of different. I don't think it's.
It hasn't been okay.
I don't think it's finalized in any way yet, but one way or another, I think we're getting a third installment in that series.
No, and I definitely think having independent stuff like this, especially in film, is good to have, because you're able then to tell some stories that you probably wouldn't do. And Disney's not putting out something like MIDSOMMAR or Hereditary. Let's just be honest.
Though I've seen some really hilarious edits of like the Pixar version of MIDSOMMAR. It's so funny. With all this AR art we got going around, anybody can make up these weird drafts.
Well, that could be maybe that's The Offspring. It's an AI movie.
It's the A24 Pixar movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all done, but it's a horror movie done in digital format.
This. I really
like a
do
Pixar
like this.
thing called The Offspring, and you make it
dark Pixar.
We try to emulate that old like clay animation in it though, but it's not clay animation. It's
the nightmare before The Offspring.
Yeah, I think we got something with that.
Yeah,
A24, hit us up, please. Please hit us up.
Have you seen Tusk?
Tusk is. I've seen bits of it.
It's a weird one.
That is definitely.
Kevin
strange.
Smith, of all people, to direct an A24 horror.
Yeah, I would not have pictured that originally.
Like super weird, like monster type character turns into monster type storyline. But
well, it almost reminded me of. You ever seen the movie Basket Case? Way back, I think it's in the 80s.
Who's in it?
I don't remember. I just remember
nobody's in it.
It's essentially there's people in it.
Nobody directed it.
Nobody directed it. I think it's Basket Case. It's essentially this guy is carrying around his twin brother in a basket. But that
makes you think of 8 heads in a duffel bag, dude.
8 heads in a duffel bag?
The classic Joe Pesci movie. You never saw 8 heads?
No.
Oh man, we're watching a trailer right now.
Oh no. See, this is what he does. He makes me watch things.
8 heads in a duffel bag.
8 heads in a duffel bag. I don't think I've ever seen this one.
Oh my god, dude, this movie's great.
Burger King.
Classic
look
piece
at that.
Of cinema, dude.
Look at that grain.
That VHS player.
What?
I love that movie so much.
That you think you've seen it all, and then it's like it already happened years ago.
No, man.
You ever hear that thing where like if you come up with an idea, you have to assume that at least 100 other people
have the
exact same idea?
Definitely. They played this. There was another one that like they played it on HBO like all the time.
Oh. That leads me to a point. I think that's what I like about the A24 movies is you can have similar structures, ideas going on, but what can make a story different is someone's, what the hell is this?
It's an actual scene from 8 heads in a duffel bag.
Is he having like a psychotic break?
Yeah. This is the height of Joe Pesci's career, man.
Oh my God. Not Home Alone?
No, this is it. Look how shitty the effects are, too. It's like you can see right through their necks.
Yep. Oh my God. Yes. What I was saying, though, is that originality, bringing your own voice to the story, will differentiate it.
Which I think the
even though
creative
structure-
freedom to do that.
And that's where that having that independent sort of off-Broadway, whatever you want to call it, sector, always having
musical
that is good.
version of Midsummer.
A musical version of Midsummer. You could probably do that. And then just people start jumping off the cliff.
One by one in a conga line.
Well, it's amazing how certain things, the line between, I feel like, comedy and horror is so thin, because I think of that scene where
the heads are in the duffel bag.
No, not the heads of the duffel bag. In Midsummer, when the senior citizens of the group are it's the older ones in the group, and they're leaping
and it's
off.
like totally unexpected. There's no ramp up
and they
to
just
that
they
at all.
just jump off. It's their way of unburdening themselves from the group. But then if you go to a Netflix show a few years back called Vikings, I think it's just called Vikings. No, Norseman. No. The Norseman?
Norseman, yeah. You put me on the Norseman.
Yes. There's it starts out that way where he's like, okay, go jump. And they're like, what if we didn't?
Yeah. hold on, listen to me.
It's just amazing. It's the same setup, sort of.
Just like a cultural difference.
Yeah. And then just the way they play it out and the dialogue, how the men are just like, okay, I have an idea. How about we don't jump, we just leave. We go away. We'll go into like exile. But yeah, that how close it is, how you can do like a very similar scene. And if you just take it one way or the other, you either have a horror scene or you have a comedy scene.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. And that can come down
that's
to
how you
the
get
person.
Beetlejuice. That's how you get Addams Family. That's how you get Monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's key to having the independent movement in what any art form that you have. Because if you have to make a movie and you have to make billions and billions of dollars off it, or write a story, compose a song, write a poem, if you have to make billions, it's going to be tough. And that's always one thing too. I've always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, is just because something makes a lot of money doesn't necessarily make it good, and vice versa. Because something doesn't make a lot of money doesn't necessarily make it bad.
You had said that you were going to, did you end up watching X or Pearl?
Yes, I saw X.
What did you think of it? I'm curious. This will contain obviously spoilers.
I liked the sort of like, well, because they're going to shoot like an adult film.
Yeah.
I don't know. I liked that. Just set up to me was so strange.
One of the perfect balances between comedy and seriousness.
It had, I don't want to say it like, because I don't want to make people get in that mindset, but it did remind me a little bit of like an Evil Dead sort of vibe.
Same. Like the cabin type,
yeah. And I don't know if that is an inspiration to that.
Yeah.
Did you just start playing that?
No, are you going crazy?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
I don't know what that was. Sorry. Sorry.
No, I liked it. I was yes, that blend. And that is a hard blend to achieve, I think.
It is, yeah. I mean,
to have you both terrified and laughing in the same movie.
Within same sequences.
Yes.
Like,
oh, you talking about the one? No.
The answering the door was what I was getting at.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. I would give that. Yeah.
Just so good.
Yeah,
I was losing it in the theater.
I didn't get around to Pearl though.
Some people like Pearl more than X. Even.
Okay.
When I watched it initially, I didn't understand that Pearl is a prequel to X.
Oh, okay.
Like I knew it was supposed to be, but I was like, I'm not getting it from this. But then I understood that it's not supposed to be the girl, the one that what's her name, Mia Goth plays.
Okay,
it's the older woman that lives on the farm
in X.
Is the one that's in Pearl.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes better sense now. Timeline wise, it's like in the 50s.
Okay,
yeah, sometime in the 50s, and it is the ending of Pearl is perfect. Absolutely, it's one of the most perfect endings I've ever seen in a movie. So the guy in that is our new Superman.
Oh, is that him? Oh, yeah. All right.
Weird to think that he is going to be Superman, but
hey, that goes to what we've been talking about, how horror, I don't know what it is with the horror genre, but you do get a lot of people who get a start in horror and then get propelled further on, which I love, but also I think that there is that sense of like horror gets a little bit of, people look at it, downgrade, it's like, oh, it's the horror genre, or oh, it's the sci-fi genre.
Or it's an independent.
Yeah, it's like, that's not true art.
AMC started putting banners, like when you go on the app to like buy a ticket for a movie at AMC, they started putting a banner on certain films, labeling them as artisan films. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, because it's just like, it could be off-putting to certain people.
I've always maintained that when it comes to anything artistic, it exists as a landscape.
Yeah.
To say one thing's better, or I mean, there are some things that, yes, like if you start to get into like propaganda, that's where I'm like, okay,
let's look at Barbie.
Don't do that.
Let's look at Barbie for an example. Barbie is like this tentpole money-making juggernaut of a blockbuster, but it's also made by one of the most independent, And A24 started independent filmmaker who definitely did something very much their own style with it. So it's like, I think that it's creeping into the lexicon to like have the new crazy weird thing.
Seems to be the thing though. It's like a studio says, oh, who can we get? We have a name, but let's pick someone. Well, Greta Gerwig was still, I'd say, a little bit already established.
She built her name up to get there.
But that seems to be a thing that goes on now where they like find a essentially unknown director and be like, okay, hey, let's see what they can do.
Give this kid a shot.
Yeah, give him like a $300 million movie. Yeah. And be like, okay, you gotta triple it now.
Tall order.
At least. I don't even know. Would that still be considered a flop? I guess not if you tripled the budget.
No, that's like, if you, honest to God, if you make a profit of X million dollars, I think that they're happy. But it's like, if you just break over top of even from like all the money that was spent on marketing, all the money that was spent on producing the film itself. See, that's the thing that always gets a lot of people. They're like, oh, well, the budget was X and it made X. So it's, well, you're forgetting double the budget because it's almost always exactly the same as the marketing.
Yeah.
So there you go. Therein lies the rub.
Well, speaking of that, A24 does a pretty good job at marketing their
I would say so, yeah. Like they don't go crazy. They do a lot of viral marketing too, which is, I think, they're part of their strength. It just recently talked to me. I mean, that was...
which you've seen, yes.
It was very good. It was an entirely Australian movie, which I didn't know going into it, but I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Then, I mean, A24 has had a hand in Australian cinema a few times. The Guy Pearce movie, The Rover, with also Robert Pattinson, also an A24 movie, but it was entirely Australian. God, my stomach is in an uproar. All right.
Need some of that. Do you have Tums? Uh-oh. This is where he drugs me now.
I hope you've all enjoyed Han on the podcast. He won't no longer...
So if you... No, I'll still be... If you had to recommend someone who's never seen A24 horror movies. Obviously, some people just don't like horror movies no matter what, but you can never get them to do it.
I'd probably recommend The Witch. I think that's the easiest
to start off.
There's some ones that I like that I don't know that necessarily a lot of other people would. I mean, It Comes at Night, I really enjoyed. It's a very different take on that style. I mean, it's not really clear ever what the threat is, which I think is super cool about it.
No, and that's that whole thing of what's the scary thing. Like if you show, there's a quality of like, and this goes back to years of narrative theory and storytelling. If you show them or describe it 100%, what they see is what they see, and that's all the audience or the reader has to imagine. But if you don't show it, if you let them then fill in the gaps and imagine it, can that be more scary?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of classic scenes like Psycho, the classic shower scene. You don't really
see a lot of the time
in that.
Your viewer's imagination can be far more terrifying than anything you can come up with.
Yeah. And I think even though X doesn't do that all the time.
No.
No, I think it's the complete. There are a few moments too where I think you get a little bit of that, but certainly The Witch, Hereditary.
Very much Hereditary.
Definitely does.
We were also talking The Green Knight. It was kind of one of those ones that was kind of like on the line. I wasn't really sure whether or not to include
and that is definitely because I do think there are those horror elements to it, because anytime you're dealing with things, I think the Green Knight, that version that they took of it, because the whole story they're not really sure who wrote it, comes from like the early Middle Ages, so there's different versions and pieces put together. They kind of took it and made it their own a little bit, not completely, but they stayed true to the main theme spirit of the story.
Yeah.
It's that notion of like having to grow up and eventually confronting your mortality.
Yeah.
And that is what our main character in The Green Knight is doing. But that one scene, I got to say, where after he's set upon by, I guess, just highwayman bandit, and he's like left in the woods, and it like does like a whole 360 pan, and it's him now just completely rotted away. It's just his skeleton that's left.
Yeah.
And then it comes back around and there he is still alive. So I thought that was a very interesting shot to do.
Also, just the element in that one of like them having brought back to life a very lost text. There's like one copy of it left in decent enough condition to translate. Like, I thought that was just like such an intriguing concept on its own. Like, A24 has a way of like really making you feel like you need to see that.
I gotta say, they do an amazing job at building their worlds.
Yeah.
Even in these smaller stories, like the stories are focused, but the worlds that they put them in do feel huge. Like I feel like I definitely feel that this story they're telling is not existing just on the screen I'm watching. I do feel like it exists in that world that they've set it in.
Yeah.
And I think that's kudos to them.
I'm very ecstatic that Talk to Me got greenlit for a sequel.
Oh, really? Already?
Yeah, it was like, honest to God, it was like right at the end of its second week in theaters. Some people would say that the ending of Talk to Me is very easily predicted. I've heard that a couple times. But even if that is the case, which I personally don't believe that it is, I think it's still a very good story.
Yeah,
and it's a spin on the ghost story of like the seance, as it were.
Yeah,
it's kind of looking at it from a lens of like teens doing drugs in the basement kind of thing, and it's like, oh, they're gonna go meet up at a party and like have a seance, and it's like, but it's like the hand in Talk to Me is rumored to have been like they go into like the weird like stories that have come out about the hand and where it came from, and it's like everything from it's a medium's hand that was encased in ceramic, and so it was the witch's hand, so nobody really knows, but it's like it's got that weird like lore built around it, but it's like they use the hand as the channel into.
It's an actual hand.
It's like a ceramic hand.
Oh wow, okay.
That's like severed off at like the forearm.
That's almost like the like the monkey's paw short story.
That was the vibe I got. Got from
I like
it
that.
too. And it was like they would use the hand as like a tap in to speak to the ghosts, and it was looked at as like a party drug almost. I was like, that's such an interesting take on a ghost story. It's like something so different. Like, that's one I don't want to spoil for people
too much. Okay,
but I'm just jazzed it's getting a sequel because I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I definitely, if you have a chance, even if you don't want, I'd even say Green Knight is a little bit, if you're not into the horror genre, Green Knight definitely has some things going on there. But if you want to give it an A24 or Lady Bird.
Lady Bird's good. Yeah. Just honestly, any A24, but since we're looking at, specifically horror stuff this and next month, take a look just at any of these titles, really. I wouldn't even just Google search or whatever, A24 horror. I'm sure you'll find some good stuff. Yeah. Like I said, there's some of the Garden Feud that I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed everything that Ari Aster has done. Rob Eggers. Yeah. Both their endeavors and stuff like I found some gems that I've really liked, like It Comes at Night. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I found it's like different atmosphere, kind of something different. It was a post-apocalyptic, but at the same time, it's like kind of insinuated as a monster, kind of insinuated as a zombie type thing. So it's like, oh, okay, something different. So if you're looking for something different, try to cleanse the palate a little bit. Yeah, I'd say give some of the A24 movies a shot.